Welcome back to a new year of the Integrateness Podcast with Jason and Jolene. I'm Jason.
I'm Jolene.
And we are here to bring you some post-Christmas cheer.
Yeah, how about early 2024 cheer?
Yeah, bet we never thought we'd even get here.
Bet
3 years ago.
Bet you never thought Jason would just reference Christmas once we're past it.
Yeah, I know. How about that?
How
Miracles upon miracles. It helps for recording this before Christmas, so it's still kind of in my head. But we held off on recording this episode as close to the new year as possible because Jolene always sort of sets her new year, new you intentions. And we figured it'd be good to kind of capitalize on that, so to speak, at the time of year when everyone's thinking about New Year's resolutions and all that kind of stuff. So here we are.
Yes. And you know, we talked about recording it a little earlier in the sequence of things, and I was like, I'm just not feeling it yet. I am not feeling next year yet. And I think that that's important. Like when we can only be pre-prepared for so many things, and some things we need to be in order to really experience them. Right?
You do, yeah, in the motion, right? And I think that's where, like, you know how people always have their New Year's resolutions that they start talking about leading into Christmas. It's like, and they almost epically all fail. And it's because you're kind of planning on something that's this nebulous concept, and you've got to really be in a mental state to bring these things into reality. And they also got to be doable things, right?
Yeah, and I think that we sometimes are so eager to move forward that we don't sit in review long enough. And I love December for this. So from about mid-November to December, I tend to have my, especially for my monthly clients, I tend to have a yearly wrap up. Here's where we were in January. Look at the version of yourself there. Look at the version of yourself halfway through the year. Who are you now? How pleased are you with, who you are today and the things that you've surprised yourself with, the things that you want to keep striving towards, like really locate yourself. And I think sometimes we're really quick to just skip ahead and really forget to go, oh my God, yeah, I forgot that happened in February. And oh my gosh, yeah, I remember March. That was blah, blah, blah. When we get through the hard times, we have a really hard time going back and validating them. But when we are far enough away from them, it gets a little easier to do that. So I like that about reviewing the year. So I like to sit in that for a good amount of time before I really look at, okay, what am I gearing up for next year? So one of the things that helps sets my intention for that, like we talked about this last New Year's episode. So go back and think about, learn about the difference between intentions and resolutions. I like to make intentions, right? One of the things I'll look at is the significance of the year. So we are in 2024. And 2 + 2 + 4 from a numerology perspective equals 8. So what does the number 8 represent, right?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So I Googled it here to give you guys just a bunch of different ideas. And for me, I always find the ones that kind of jump out and have meaning for me. So the words that stand out for me is victory, prosperity, and overcoming. And then the number 8's a symbol for energetic vibration of personal power, hidden power, shared resources, determination, material and financial gain, the pinnacle, recognition of work, lifestyle upgrades, rebirth, and generation and transformation. So that's kind of like from an astrological and numerology perspective. Okay.
Fun word for 7 o'clock.
Yeah. You enunciated nebulous really well. And I was like, oh, that was impressive. I did not with this one. I got sloppy tongue today, guys. So it's funny because now as I'm reading that, I just looked that up right now. But I've had one word, because I always find one word to anchor into, one desired state of being. And this year was connection for me. And that was a big one because I had kind of isolated for the couple years prior. I had peace one year, I had surrender the next year, and then it was connection this year. And I really expanded into that. And I've been sitting on this for about a month, and I was like, the word immersion just kept coming to me. So when I looked it up, just to look at the semantics of all of it, it was to involve oneself deeply in a particular activity or interest. And I really looked at that and the areas of my life. And now that I'm looking at what number 8 signifies, I'm like, this is it. Like that solidified it as I was reading it, because I really am looking to immerse myself deeper into some things, right? I'm in a relationship and I look forward to what we can build in the next year and immersing myself into that more. immersing myself into parts of my career that I've kind of just been like sliding on the surface of the last couple of years that I really want to dig a little deeper into. And that is like expanding past some of my traditional therapy roles and again into more intuitive mediumship based stuff that I've been just tangoing with a little bit, but not fully stepping on the dance floor with.
That was a really good analogy, by the way.
I use analogies all the time. My clients know that. Like I throw out so many. Oh my God. And, you know, I think about like even just with my kids, like immersing into this like deeper connection with them as they're older. And even just into my future steps here. I actually I had so much intentional manifesting kind of energy behind things. I actually think I'm in it now.
Cool.
I'm really in it. Like I am immersed in it now. I'm not forward thinking about the manifesting. I'm living the manifestation of so many things right now. This podcast being one of them, my relationship being another one, career and certain aspects there, looking at my bucket list that is just like knocking things off bits at a time. It's no longer things of the future. I feel immersed in it. So this is my year for immersion, you guys.
I like that. That's really good.
I'm like so jazzed thinking about it too.
I can tell.
So with that, Jason, what is your year going to bring you?
I have absolutely no idea.
Oh, I like it.
Because I know there's a few things. Like there's professionally, I've got one thing going on mid-year I can't talk about yet. Probably in about a month I can. But it's a pretty big thing. It's pretty cool. I have another thing that's been brewing for almost a year that I can't talk about because I signed an NDA. And it could happen in the next little while. And then I'll know and then I can talk about it. So I haven't planned too much because I don't know what's going to happen with any of this stuff that I can't even talk about, which seems really weird to try talking about it. Do you know what I mean? Because if one thing happens, there's one thing I know that's going to happen, and there's the other thing that's up in the air. If the other thing that is up in the air happens, a lot's going to change for me. That's all I can say.
I love that.
Right?
So like big things that come to me, it's like your year of ta-da.
Yeah, it does sound like the year of ta-da.
I feel like you're literally taking the sheet off and being like, ta-da.
Let's see what happens.
Right? Behind this showcase is. That's really exciting. So I feel like it's your year of like anticipation or even flexibility. Like you are so flexible to just like flow. It'll be your year of flow and go. Flow and go. Because once you hit those, there's no flowing. It's go.
Yeah, they'll both
that's
be
what you're
go
saying.
Things. Yeah. And that's professionally, right? Which is a big thing, especially after like almost 4 years of being very busy with certain things and making stuff happen. I think regardless of what happens with these other things, I want to also like do less.
Yeah.
Because at like 51, I know I've got less time on this planet that I've spent, unless for some miraculous reason I live to like 102. Which is pretty rare.
Next season, focusing on biohacking.
Right? So I've got less time. So it's like I'm getting to the point where it's like, how do I want to spend it? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of that going on in my head. And I do want to be less busy. So probably still like focus on the things that really matter that I'm doing, but not have a lot of external stuff going on. Like I've always had my finger in a lot of pies. And I want my finger in sort of less pies, but make the pies my fingers are in better.
All I can think of is American
Pie. I just
Pie.
looked in my head as soon as I'm saying that.
Okay.
We'll just tell your mom that we ate it.
It's Jason's year of apple pie.
Apple pie. So yeah, and so on a personal level, I think work on. We're talking about this in a future episode, but work on vulnerability more, which will make a lot more sense in about a few weeks when we do an episode on that subject. And I think that will then allow me to get more out of my whatever time I've got left.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I like that. So for our listeners, this is what you guys can expect out of us this year, right? If I'm in a state of immersion and that's where I'm going deeper into some things, you can expect to just get some like richer content that way.
Yeah.
And for Jason in this like flow go mode, like imagine what both of those intentions independently will do collectively for this podcast.
Oh yeah. It'll be crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I get really excited about that because I think, it's one of those things. It's the chain reaction of like, sometimes we have delays because the person who's supposed to like partner or match or meet us at the next intersection isn't quite there yet. So we think it's our delay, but it's not, right? And I often think about like how perfectly aligned some of the timing for this podcast was. And even when we tried to do our summer episode and we were like, hard no, we had the intention, it wasn't working.
Did not happen.
You know, like I really lean into a lot of that. So some people who feel stuck or are looking at the end of this year being like, oh, you know, I was really hoping for this or that. I see this lots in especially like job opportunity things and stuff. I'm like, this is where that like rejection protection idea comes out. But really, like, remember, whatever it is you're working towards, if there's a left-hand turn that you can't quite make on that, like, you got to wait till that light changes. And that light could be one other person lined up to like free up that space for you or something. And they can't free it up until something's freed up for them. Like, we get this like, you know, like a roadblock or a traffic jam in the universal flow of our lives, I think, right?
Yeah, and we think it's all about us because we're all very much so, but it's not. Like, certain things have to line up with many people in order for something to happen, especially if it's like a career-based thing or any kind of professional creative venture that's not just a solo act.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and even if it is a solo act, so I always refer back to when I had this podcast literally drafted on paper. Right? I was so ready to launch one. I actually purchased a podcast. For those of you who listened to the very first episode we ran, I purchased a how to make a podcast like program. And that program actually helped me create the program I run in my therapy business now because of the model she used and my idea of reaching more people with less of my time and more availability and more affordability for them. So it's funny that I took that course to run a podcast, but it taught me more about the course design than anything, right? But through that, I actually created this podcast. Essentially, I had a lot of it laid out. Into Greatness was the name. Mm-hmm. I had like integrated into, you know, and it's so funny because I was like, this is the first thing that I was really gung-ho about that really never followed through. And it was a weird thing for me because when I really work for something to happen, it'll happen. It sometimes takes way more effort, but like it'll happen. And that one just didn't. And I was okay just like letting it sit there inactive, like pending, you know? And then now, like, I really so appreciate why that timing was what it was, because it was about Jason being ready for the podcast. Because that podcast would have sucked if it was just me. It would have sucked.
Well, and it was funny because I was approached about doing this podcast, but I'm like, I don't want to do it by myself. Like, it would have sucked. It would have. Like, what am I'm not even qualified to talk about mental. You know what I mean? And I hate, this is, okay, I'm going to go on a little rant. With modern podcasts and modern YouTube, everybody out there wants to be a self-help person or this or that or a financial advisor or a movie critic, and they don't have any fucking training to do any of it. And I didn't want to be that person.
Totally. And you're
right?
not.
And I'm not. So it was just like, okay, I need to find someone who can do this, who is qualified, that then makes kind of whatever I'm saying a little more valid.
So cool.
And it worked out.
I know. And I just reflect on that so much because, again, that wasn't so much about what I wasn't doing right. It was literally about like not even knowing that Jason was out there and I was supposed to do this with someone else. Right.
Yeah.
Like, it was so weird. When I go back in retrospect and look about it, and I talk about that, like, again, another analogy, is, you know, in relationships with people or business partnerships and things like that. Like, I talk about it like figure skating and pair skating. So you can be like a gold Olympic figure skater and be like top of the world, and you still can't do anything that a recreational small town pairs skater can do. Right? Mm-hmm. Because they can do lifts. They can do shit like spin their partners around. You can't do that by yourself out there. It doesn't matter how good you are. And I think that's the coolest thing, is that we can be at the top of our game, totally capable of so many things, but still unable to achieve certain things simply because we can't do that alone.
That's right.
And I think that's one of the coolest things to come to terms with once you've healed a codependency wound. So especially for relationships, finally, once that place people will reach where they're like, I'm okay doing this on my own. I'm sourcing my own happiness. I've got my own plan for the future, this and that. And then it's like, oh, right. But this is where it is okay to want a partner, to want someone else. And it becomes a healthy place of partnership for more expansion and growth than it is about dependency, right? You already know how to skate. You're not holding on to the partner, hoping they hold you up. That's what like codependency skating is.
Yeah, totally. It's like the
right?
kid with the little metal thing they put in front of them as they're skating,
yeah,
right?
Totally.
Yeah.
So I just love that analogy because it's like, you know, I think people and that's another piece that I'll remind someone is like, in a partnership, you're capable of doing so much more maybe than you have been on your own. And now's your time to learn to skate on your own better, right? Yep. And think about what you'll bring to the partnership with that. So that's what a lot of people will come to me for, is like backstepping into how do I build my own skill set, because I've been relying on the pairs skating too much.
That's right. No, it's funny how that works. It's like you can't really, the old analogy, love someone until you love yourself. But then sometimes once you've kind of learned that experience through someone else, then you've kind of got to go off on your own and figure it out how to do it on your own.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we look into this next year, even just from a practical standpoint, Jason mentioned a couple timelines for himself that he professionally is looking towards. And you reference professionally, but really, let's face it, that totally impacts you guys personally.
Oh, big time. Big time.
Impacts you financially, impacts you relationship-wise. Jess is going to get different versions of you. Griffin's going to get different versions of you at those times and that kind of thing. So, but the reality is money and career often, take priority when it comes to the scheduling of our life, right?
Yep.
And what things revolve around. For myself, I go, I create a vision board on my daytimer. I still have a hard copy daytimer that I live by daily. And I just like cut out magazine pictures and an entire vibe that I just cover the whole thing with. And then, you know what I do to laminate it, quote unquote? I put packing tape on it.
Nice.
So it seals everything on and it's good all year round, right? But essentially that becomes like the guiding vision of my year. How do I want this year to feel? What kind of vibe is it going to have? And all of my daytimers for the last 4 years have been very different feels and vibes. And I look at them daily and go, I've nailed this and this and this. And yes, I even had a picture of Pink in my this year one because I was going to her concert, right? Like all the things. So I look at that for the year, but then I also very intentionally look at where I want to be quarterly. And then I break that down month by month. And I have a rough idea where I want to be quarterly. I have a rough idea what I want a year to look like financially. And then I review that every year or every month that we roll into a new month. What is happening on the micro scale? What's my goals this month? Sometimes it's in September, for example, it was adjust to new school and hockey schedules, get in the flow of all of that stuff. That was a big part of my focus. It wasn't on career growth that month. It was around how do I now get into a brand new routine and schedules with my kids and get everyone flowing and going, right? Summer was a different kind of intention for the 2 months. And then there's specifics I need to run my program. I need to, work longer days so I get more days off. I will actually put things like that. Or I would say intentionally, I'm investing in my relationship this month, or I'm investing in the kids this month a little more than usual, or whatever that looks like. Right. So I like to break things down month by month as well.
That's good. Well, because it's always, although life will throw curveballs at you, no one anticipated the wildfires of the past summer and how that affects everything. I think it's good to have a plan or an idea and just make sure you're flexible with that plan.
Totally.
Or idea, right?
And my monthly plans usually come up when August 30th rolls in and I'm flipping to September 1st, I sit down and write down that month. I do it September 1st or October 1st. Nice. But ideally I do have an idea of for example, my workshop is one of the big ones. How many times do I want to run it this year, right? So that'll be linked to a financial goal, but it'll also be linked to where my caseload is sitting at certain times and just what I desire, how many people I want to hit, right? How many times? And usually it's 3 to 4 times, right? That I'll run it in a year. And I let that determine itself based on when people start reaching out to me. So I never pre-book those until I get an influx of referrals and I go, I think it's time.
That's
and
awesome.
It has never let me down. It defined itself that way.
That's
it's
awesome.
Cool.
That's a really good way to do it too. When
yeah.
you got people asking for something, it's like, well, I guess now it's time.
Now is
right?
the time.
Now
yeah,
is the
because
time.
when I chase it, there's been one time I tried to make it work better in my schedule just to cram it in where I needed to, and I didn't get the same kind of attraction of people coming to it. Yeah.
That's kind of a good life lesson, I think. There is just a time and a place for things. We're talking about the podcast happening. But I think there's a lot of things in life that people like to plan because they think planning, you know what I mean? I'm going to plan this workshop, I'm going to do all this stuff. We'll manifest it and make it happen, but it doesn't.
No.
Right? Sometimes you got to have that. things are just going to happen. Especially if you're creative. You kind of got to go with that feeling.
Yeah, you have to have the desire for it. That's like the key to manifesting, but you have to let go of the outcome. One of the biggest things is like, how do you want to feel when you get there? And you actually anchor into the feeling. So if you guys go to www.jolenedawn.com to my meditations tab on my webpage, I have a manifesting meditation that I bumped to the top at the beginning of the new year there. And that actually gets you into that state. It gets you imagining the things, that you're wanting and visualizing that, and then linking with the feeling, like how good that feels. And now you take that feeling and that's what you lead that intention with, because most of the time you're actually going to get that feeling about halfway along the way. It's not when you finally get the goal, right? It's like you can have the house and the kids and the job and the marriage, and people are like, but I'm still unfulfilled. And that's what my entire workshop is about, is like, stop chasing the goal, chase the desired state of being. Because if you're not in that state of being, whether it's like actual like life satisfaction, like even basic satisfaction, not even joy and, happiness, but like satisfied, contentment. If you're not even there, what are you chasing?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
None of us, you're going to be completely unfulfilled no matter what.
Yeah. And that's what happens. People get all the check mark boxes. They got all the things, and they are so unfulfilled, and they're like running on the hamster wheel. And I was there. I know what that feels like,
same.
right?
I've been there too. I think we all are there at some point.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we're sold that concept of, in order to be happy, you must have A, B, and C.
Well, because it does bring us temporary happiness,
it does.
right? Like we have this idea, I got this, and this is like what we're supposed to be doing in a sense, right? And not always conforming to, societal rules and things like that, but we have our own blueprint of what we think we want. And sometimes what we think we want, we're like just really fucking wrong.
Yep.
And like I always, I've really learned, like, sometimes there's a better plan than mine out there.
Exactly.
And now I make space for that better plan. So I will say, I want this or better.
Exactly. That's a good.
It's my standard rule now. Like, you know what? I want this, but if this isn't actually, because I would undershoot myself a lot, right?
Yeah.
And even when I think about when I first started dating, I was like, yeah, that person looks potentially good. It was like, man, if I would have got stuck on that as being my maximum, like I never would have found what I'm in right now, right? So it was like, I'll take that or better, right?
There you go, folks. There is some perfectly good advice.
Yes. So think about 2024. I'm immersing myself. Jason's in the Flogo. I'm going to get you a shirt that's like 2024. Flogo, mofos. Yes.
That's awesome.
Flogo,
I would wear
mofo.
that. I don't wear a lot of like text tees or
That
anything,
one
but I'd
you
wear
would.
that one.
And then like hashtag Intergreatness Podcast.
That's right. So let us know in the comments what your New Year's plan is, your intentions, your goals, what you hope will come of this year, or better.
Or better.
And we will see you next week for your next favorite episode of the Into Greatness Podcast. Until then, I'm Jason.
I'm Jolene.
Happy New Year, mofos.